Bonjour ou bonsoir, it depends on where you are. Welcome back to a new Sunday Live. I see we have already couple of people here. We have Connie. Welcome, Connie. We have Ivo, Linda, Sherry. Welcome, Sherry. Don't remember your name from before, so if you're new here, welcome. We have Andrea here. Always a pleasure to have you. And Marilyn as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. Today we have a much requested topic, which is learning both French and Spanish successfully and ideally without mixing them up, because that's what tends to happen when you learn two languages that are very similar. Before we get started, I need to tell you that I currently have a few one-on-one coaching spots available. So if you would like to have some personal help from me beyond the group coaching which we have in the French Accelerator, or if you would like to join the French Accelerator, same thing, you will find the links in the description below. You can book a free call with me to discuss your French learning project, and together we will find out what is the best way for you to move forward and how we can perhaps work together. So don't hesitate to book a call with me if you'd like that. And without further ado, we have a worksheet as usual, and if you haven't received it in your email, the worksheet is still available on my Telegram channel. The link is also in the description below. So yes, Andrea is saying she was driving at 11 a.m. Eastern, and so she wasn't able to join the earlier meeting. She is referring to the group coaching that we have in the French Fluency Accelerator. The group coaching is exactly 2 hours before this live, and it goes from 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how much we have to speak about. And Errol is here. Welcome, Errol. Good to have you here. So, French and Spanish. So the first thing that you have to know is that, and as usual, we will have the idiom of the week and also the French summary towards the end of this call. So the first thing that you need to know and understand is that French and Spanish are both Latin languages or Romance languages. Like, we use the same words, like those two words indifferently about languages. They are basically languages that have evolved from the original Latin languages, so they have a common base. And so that means that you can use the knowledge you have of French to learn Spanish and vice versa, because they are very similar. So on the one hand, it is easier to learn French or Spanish if you already know the other one. On the other hand, you always have the risk that they are so similar that you will mix them up. So we will address how to do that today. And the advice on this worksheet or on this live or recording, if you're watching the recording, by the way, welcome. If you're watching the recording, the comment session is here for you. I look forward to hearing from you. So the advice that I'm sharing today will apply not only to French and Spanish, but also to any combination of Latin languages. So French and Italian, French and Portuguese, Spanish and Portuguese, which I have learned both myself, Spanish and Italian, etc. I mean, Romanian is also a Latin language, and there are a few more which are less frequent. So the same thing that I will share today, you could use to apply to other Latin languages. If you want to learn French and Spanish and Italian, that will work just as well. You just want to, stick to the plan that I'm going to share today. So, and to a lesser extent, the stuff that I share today will also be useful to learn other languages that are not Latin languages. So of course, if you're learning a language, if you're an English native and you're learning French and then you want to learn Russian next, or Chinese, for example, you will lose some of the benefits that you get from, not lose some, but you will have less advantages from knowing French already than if you were learning Spanish. But you will have more advantages from knowing a second language. That as soon as you're learning your third language, it becomes easier just because you have better learning strategies. So that's something that I really want you to understand, is that if it has been really hard for you to learn French, it will not be as hard to learn Spanish, because you already have some good reflexes. You already know to do your daily French bath, and you can transfer that to your daily Spanish bath. You already know to have a vocabulary learning system, like a notebook, for example, or a flashcard app. And those strategies you can also use in Spanish, and you can also use in any other language. So some languages will be harder. Spanish will definitely be easier than others, because of the few things that I'm going to share here today. Interestingly, I was wearing this because I thought I would be cold, but I'm actually pretty warm, so let me just remove it. So the first thing that I have on the list to tell you about today is the grammar. So it's the first point on the worksheet. Grammar, French and Spanish have very, very similar grammar. For example, when it comes to sentence structure, In the live about sentence structure, also in the accelerator workshop about word order, the title is word order, I have shared that in French and in English, you have this order, which is subject, verb, object in this order. And I told you that it's not very frequent because only about 33% of the world languages have this order. Half of the world languages have subject or object verb with the verb at the end, but French and English and also Spanish have subject, verb, object. So this is an advantage that you can transfer. You're already used to this word order in English and in French, and it will be the same in Spanish. Furthermore, one thing which is different in English and in French is the placement of adjectives, which in French are typically after the noun for most of them, and pronouns, object pronouns, who typically go before the verb in French, while they go after the verb in English. So for example, typical case, in English you say I love you, in French you say je t'aime, with, it's like I, you, love. In Spanish you have this as well. So you will say te quiero. In Spanish you drop the subject if it's not needed, because the ending of the verb gives away the subject. So you don't need to say yo te quiero, that would be a bit too much. You can say just te quiero. But you can see that the te quiero continuation is the same as the je t'aime in Spanish, just the je is missing in case it's not needed. So you do have a couple of differences. So for example, like I said, you can drop the pronoun, the subject pronoun in English, in Spanish if it's not needed, which is something you can't do in French or in English because the verbs just don't sound as different. So you do have little tweaks that you need to adjust like that. But most of the French word order and sentence structure will be similar in Spanish. So if you have mastered, or if you have a good grasp of the sentence structure in French or in Spanish, you will be able to transfer that into the other language, which is really, really useful. A second thing that is very similar is conjugation. So a thing that's very difficult if you're an English native and you're learning French is getting the hang of all those verbs, because in French we just conjugate so much, while in English you have very little conjugation. You say, I sing, you sing, he sings, we sing, you sing, they sing, and there's only the third one, which is different. But in French, I'm going to say je chante with an I, tu chantes with an IS, il chante with an I, nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante with ENT. And that's a lot more conjugation than in English. Good news, in Spanish, or bad news, I guess, in Spanish, you have the same thing with conjugation. So there's just as much conjugation in Spanish than in French. So with singing, if I'm not mistaken, it's canto, cantas, canta, cantamos, cantais, cantan. Okay, so you have six different versions of the verb just for the present. Very, very similar to French. A lot of it is very similar. You also in Spanish have compound tenses similar to French, but be careful. Particularly in the past, there is a differences in how they are used. And to be honest, it took me a long time to get the hang of it, and I'm not going to try to explain the difference to you because I actually cannot remember it very well right now. But I know that it's something that if I were to need to speak Spanish soon, I would just review my conjugation and review the things, and I would just, get up to speed and speak Spanish. Right now, my Spanish is not very good because all I do with Spanish is speak to my cleaner every other week a little bit in Spanish. She speaks Spanish and German, so we always manage to somehow communicate either in one or the other. If I'm not completely sure of how to say something in German or in Spanish, there's always one of the two that I can use. So I'm really not very practiced with Spanish, but I know that I was fluent in the past, and therefore I can apply my strategies to become fluent again quite rapidly. It would probably take me a couple of weeks or a month to be able to bring up my Spanish to the level that I had at most, because you never actually forget. So it's really something to keep in mind. I'm a bit off track of the worksheet, but something to keep in mind that if you have succeeded in the past, you can succeed again. And if you have succeeded in one language, you can also apply those strategies for the other language. It's like the difference, like really the hard thing is going from monolingual to bilingual. So from speaking only one language to speaking two languages. Once you have two, it's not very hard to add more if you know to be very mindful of the strategy that you use. It's a bit different if you're a native bilingual. If you natively have two languages, you might not know the strategy to learn another language as an adult. But if you've learned one language as an adult, it becomes a lot easier to learn the other one. So like I was saying, conjugation, very similar in French and in Spanish. They also have this kind of book with Spanish. I think even from the exact same company. It's a French company, but they also make the Spanish version. So you can use the exact same strategy for that. Two things that are different in Spanish conjugation is the use of some past tenses and the subjunctive. Unfortunately, in Spanish, there's a lot more subjunctive than in French. So, for example, when I spoke about, in the French accelerator, I spoke about that, the French subjunctive, and I don't think I spoke about it here, but definitely in the French accelerator, there's a workshop about the subjunctive. But the thing is, in French, you have 4 subjunctive tenses, and really you only use one and very rarely the second one, and never those 2. In Spanish, you use them all, and they even have a future of the subjunctive, which is like for a French person, it's like, really? Like, why would you need that? They do. So I would say the Spanish has more conjugations than French, and it's like next level. You know, it probably is easier to learn French conjugation first because it's more streamlined. I mean, I hesitate to say that French conjugation is streamlined because, you know, it's very messy, but it's less messy than Spanish. Spanish does have a bit of aspects. So you have this, I can say estoy cantando, which is I'm singing. So that's the difference between Spanish and French, but you have aspects in English, so you can leverage the knowledge that you have of English. So really learning a new language is a lot about knowing what you take from one language that you already know, what you take from the other language that you already know, and what is completely different. So you're always, the more languages you know, the more likely you are to already have a point of reference, which is why it gets easier and easier. Another thing that's very similar in Spanish and in French, courtesy of the Latin origin of the 2 languages, is the vocabulary. So 50% of English vocabulary comes from French, and that's something that's really important that you want to understand and remember. Do we have a question? Estoy cantando is like the present continuous in English. Yes, it's the same. It's the same concept. Exactly. Exactly. It's like estoy cantando is I am singing. Oh, and they have one thing that's annoying in Spanish, that they have 2 verbs for to be. So they have ser y estar. I know that ser is mostly for like what's your essence, and estar for what is temporary, which is why for continuous present you will use estar. It's one thing that's difficult to wrap your head around if you're either a French native or an English native, but you get the hang of it with practice. And it's also something like, yeah, like the Spaniards, they will smile if you get it wrong. I know, because I did, but it works. You will not be misunderstood thanks to that. It's only your Spanish teacher in middle school is like, you have to use this. But yeah, like, you know, same thing that I say for French, most of the mistakes that you make actually don't matter. It's similar in Spanish. So I was going on to the vocabulary. So the thing that's really important to understand is that English is made of a good 50% of French vocabulary. So vocabulary that has come from Latin through the ancient French into English. And the rest of English vocabulary is from a Germanic language. So that means that if you're learning French and German, by the way, if you would like me to make one of those live about learning French and German, I can also do that. Just let me know, I can do it later. But that's just a tip that I'm throwing in. If you're learning French and German, a thing that's useful is to be able to separate, like recognize which words in English are from Latin and which words are from Germanic language, because then most of the French vocabulary will look like the Latin one in English, and most of the German vocabulary will look like the Germanic one in English. So it's important to be able to dissociate them. A good trick that you can use is that typically there are more vowels in the Latin words, and they go consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. So there's like half and alternating between consonant and vowel. But in German, it's not so clean in the alternating. So for example, to give you an example, the verb, you know, I'm picking English words from my worksheet. Learn, that is something that comes from German, because you have one consonant, one vowel like and then you have 2 consonants. That's rare in Latin. Latin, like especially Spanish, has more like consonant, vowel, consonant. And in German, you have the verb lernen, and that looks just like learn. So that's really useful. In French, the verb is apprendre, and it doesn't look like learn. But a word like language, okay, that's a bad example, because you have I guess you can consider an to be the vowel, because that would be in French. So then you have le, that's consonant, en, that's vowel, then you have ge, and then a and ge and e, and then that goes consonant, vowel, consonant. So it can be a bit tricky to get the hang of it. Also, Latin words are typically a lot longer than Germanic words. So you can just train yourself to separate the words of English between what's Latin origin and what's Germanic origin. And then all those that you have which are Latin origin are going to be similar in French, or most of them are going to be similar in French and also in Spanish. So it's a really useful trick to be able to learn vocabulary quite easily. Another specialty of Latin words is that they are fancy in English. So for example, you can say to go down, and that would be a Germanic thing. In German, it would be ich gehe runter, I go down. And you can also say in English to descend, and in French it's descendre. So you can learn to like re-separate the English in between the French, like between these two origins, and then that will help you learn your vocabulary in Latin languages or in Germanic languages. He was saying we also have lernen in Dutch. Yeah, that makes sense because Dutch is also Germanic languages, right? Okay, so Andrea is saying French and German would be interesting. Okay, I can do that. In French, Tony is here. Hi, Tony. With vous êtes et serez, two verbs stems joined together. Yeah, so in French, and actually that's good that you bring that up. We also have that in Spanish. I don't know if we can say that vous êtes, être, vous êtes, and vous serez, because it's also je suis. It could be that it's one stem, but that has been very badly distorted over time. But with the verb aller, that's very clear that we have three stems in one verb. So aller, je vais, so you have a stem that starts with a, je vais, tu vas, il va, nous allons, vous allez, okay, it's the a stem again, wait, sorry, je vais, tu vas, il va, nous allons, vous allez, ils vont, and then in the future you have j'irai, tu iras, il ira, and in Spanish, the verb is called ir, so it's from this stem, and then it's voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van, and so you have those stem as well. So it's really interesting. I don't think in Spanish they have the stem from al, from aller, but the other two stems they use also for the same verb. It's really interesting to see that similar things have happened in both languages. Right. Enter, go into, cow, beef, sheep, mutton. Yes, exactly. So, you know, enter in French is entrer, go into, hangin, I believe in German. Cow is the German word like die Kuh. Beef is like the French bœuf. Sheep, same word in German, Schaf. Mutton is like French mouton, and so on and so forth. And then Tony is speaking in Dutch, and I will not read that because I actually don't know Dutch. I can kind of understand it, but kind of not. All right, so that was vocabulary. One thing that's important is to be careful about false friends, because also false friends exist between French and Spanish. There are very few. I actually don't have any that comes to mind right now because I haven't really met any Spanish false friend recently. If you know some Spanish friend or Spanish French or Spanish English false friend, please pop them in the chat and I will share them. Yeah, so there can be false friend. It's important to remember that, but most of the time it will be the same vocabulary. And finally, I have a third part, which is about strategy. So how to become trilingual. Trilingual being, you know, having 3 languages. If you have 1 language now and you want to have 3, so for example, if you speak mostly English and you want to speak English and French and Spanish, this is how you can go about it. So like I was saying, you can use the same strategy for both. So things like the fluency worksheet, like this, you can use the exact same thing for Spanish. You don't even need to translate anything. It works just the same. This thing, it's mostly principles, so it will work the exact same way. You can learn Spanish with apps, applying or like apps or anything, right? Really, because that works with anything. Applying those 4 resources, so selection, activation, immersion, and safe practice. Same thing will work in Spanish. By the way, all of this is part of the French Fluency Starter Kit, and you have the link in the description if you haven't downloaded it yet. And when you download it, when you sign up for it, you also receive the special invitation for this class every time, so don't miss it. And this is specifically for French, vocabulary magic, but a lot of the same things apply to Spanish. Because, for example, well, for starters, you know, there's the vocabulary notebook do's and don'ts. Same thing with Spanish. And if you look at the page for nouns, the first thing we say is you have to indicate always the gender. So le matin, la maison. Also in Spanish, you have 2 genders, just like in French, it's masculine and feminine, and you have to care about those genders the same way. So that will apply to Spanish 100%. The same thing for masculine and feminine of the same word, and for irregular plural, unfortunately, you have that in Spanish as well, if I remember correctly. And adjectives shift from masculine to feminine in Spanish as well, and same for irregular plural. Verbs, like I was saying, they also conjugate in Spanish. And of course, you have phrases and expression in Spanish as well, because you have them in all languages. So all of this, you can use the same kind of tricks to learn Spanish. So use the same strategy for both. Once you have the hang of a strategy, just keep using it. It works. And you can use the same kind of thing that you love. If you know you love to learn with music, for example, everything I shared about learning French with music on this channel, there's a live. If you missed it, you can watch it next. It will help you also learn Spanish with music. It works the exact same way. So if you prefer to learn with movies, you can learn with Spanish movies, and so on and so forth. And finally, last but certainly not least, how to avoid mixing languages up. Unfortunately, it's not infrequent for people to start several languages only to find out that they've made a mashup in their brain. And once you have a mashup, it's very tricky to separate it. I should know because I've been there. One of the biggest challenge that I gave myself in my polyglot journey was one day to learn to be fluent in Spanish and in Portuguese at the same time, and not mix them up. So I'll tell you how I did it in a moment. But if you are not at this stage where everything is already mixed up, if you're at the beginning of considering maybe you learn French and Spanish, or if you've learned French and you're considering, okay, maybe to take up Spanish, the thing that's really important to understand, no matter how many languages you want to learn in the future, you have to start with one. I find it's a rather bad idea actually in France, we have several languages at school. We all have to have 2 foreign languages. It would be better to wait until a person has a good level in the first language before trying to make them learn the next one. So a good level would be approximately B1. So B1 is basically the point where you can have a conversation. If you go to France, for example, if you go into a country where your language is spoken, you will be able to have every conversation you need to have. And if you have problems, you'll be able to solve them. That is the definition of B1. So when you reach this kind of level where you know you can get by in your language, that is when you can consider starting the next one. But don't start them both at once. It's a recipe for confusing your brain. So start with one. And the one that you have to start with needs to be the language that is either most useful or most dear to you. So I've met a few people who are like, oh, I don't know, like I love them both equally. They would both be equally valuable. But for most people, that won't be the case. There will be one that either you prefer or you have more immediate use of it. And you have to start with this one. It doesn't really matter whether you start with French or with Spanish or with, which other language. I would still recommend, if you have a Latin language and another non-Latin language, okay, if your language that you have is either Latin or German, you can pick one of those because it's close to English. If you have another language that's farther, like Chinese or Russian, I would recommend using this one as the second one, unless you have a much better use case for the other one, because it's always more important to take into account your emotion and what will matter most to you before considering the practicality of it. But it can be a lot more practical to start with a language that's closer to English. So, French, Spanish, German, all of those languages I would consider close enough to English, and then you can expand into another one. So pick either French or Spanish to start with, and then wait until you have a good command of it before you start the second one. That will ensure, hopefully, that your brain has, a good understanding of the first language before the second one gets in, and so that will lower the chances of mixing it up. All right, let's see. We have some comments. So Tony was learning Dutch a long time ago. Oh, nice. And he was saying, my mom had a story where she was trying to speak French in France, but only Spanish words came out. And then someone was like, why are you speaking Spanish? And she was like, I was speaking French. Yes, that is something that can happen, because also I assume your mom is also Dutch. So she's a Dutch native, and perhaps she speaks English, but she doesn't have like a very strong identification with either French or Spanish. It's very likely that your brain will be like, oh yeah, that's kind of the same thing because it's so similar. And then just, chuck it together. And then when you try to speak one of the languages, it will come as like one mashup. I'll tell you what I did to avoid that in a second. Andrea is saying, when I was in high school, I took French for 2 years, then German for a year, and then at university, I studied Spanish. At that point, I started mixing them up with some nonsense gibberish. Yeah, that's really the risk. I don't think the people who have made the curricula in schools and university have thought about it so much, to be honest. They were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna give them those languages. But yeah, but here's the thing that I find is really the golden bullet to either avoid mixing or sort them out, is to use a trilingual vocabulary list, or to use a vocabulary list which has French and Spanish. So that's how I managed to separate Spanish and Portuguese in my brain. I cannot promise that I will be able to speak them now because it was several years ago that I did that. But I know that if I would need to, or if I would want to bring them back both to fluency, I would use that again because it worked really well. So I made a list. I took basically my vocabulary notebook with half, and half was Spanish and half was Portuguese. So you can do half Spanish, half French, or whichever two languages you're tend to mix. And that helped me tremendously because instead of having my brain just pick any word that kind of like mean what I mean to say, either from Spanish or Portuguese, and just block that out, what happened is that I would, for stuff, I would know which side of the notebook the words were in. So I would be more likely to know if it was Spanish and Portuguese. And even better, if my brain would pull the wrong one, I knew that the other one was stored next to it. So it was like the ultimate solution because I knew all the words together for both languages. It's super counterintuitive because you think, okay, like if you put them side by side, you're even more likely to mix them up. But actually what happened is that my brain was like, oh, I have this one. I think it's from the wrong column. Let me get the one that's in front of it in the other column, if that makes sense. So yes, Andrea saying that's a great idea. Yeah, it's the thing that saved me. It's the only thing that I can confidently say works to avoid mixing languages. That and really trying to make sure that you have a good command of a language before you learn the other one. But of course, in your case, I mean, that hasn't happened and it's too late for your brain now. You have both or even all three, Spanish, French, and German in your brain. So you need to use this kind of trick to have them be more sorted out. You can do a quadrilingual vocabulary list if you want, like, you use a larger notebook with 4 columns or just 3, Spanish, French, and German. And it can be a great way to expand your vocabulary if you're not overwhelmed with vocabulary at that moment. I mean, of course, it doesn't work if you're currently overwhelmed with vocabulary. So like when I tell you need to learn maximum 10 new words, if you're trying to do it with more than one language, like 10 words total. So 5 in French, 5 in Spanish, or 3 in French, 3 in Spanish, and 3 in German. Try to like stick to a small amount of vocabulary because it's always the same rule with that. Like the goal is not to write as many vocabulary words as you can in your notebook. I've been there, I've done that, I know it's wrong. It's to learn the words that are the most relevant. Okay, so do you recommend practicing the newest language first thing in the morning? I've heard some people saying that. It depends. I mean, it really depends. Like, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all for that. I think the reason why they recommend this is because first thing in the morning, you will have lower brain waves and they're more likely to help you learn. So I do recommend practicing languages first thing in the morning. I would say it's the thing that is most important or most critical for you that you have to practice first thing in the morning, not necessarily the newest. So of course, if your focus right now is on the newest language, then yes, do that. But if you perhaps need to improve your French still, and the newest language is more like a hobby, I would still recommend practicing the first language in the morning. So yeah, that will really depend. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. All right. Yeah, I've run out of notes from my worksheet, so please ask any question that you have. I'll be happy to answer them. And then we can get into the idiom of the week, which is very relevant. So can a trilingual, this is a question from Ivo, can a trilingual vocabulary list also help if you already speak 2 languages? That would be the Dutch word, then the English word, and the French word. Yes, probably. It depends. I mean, help with what? Like the question is always which goal do you want to achieve? So for example, if what you want to achieve is to have as good a command of Dutch and English and French and be as good as all languages, then it can be a good idea to have all your vocabulary be like all of them. But if you are already excellent at Dutch and English and you're only learning French, there isn't really a point of having a list with English and Dutch and French. So you can just choose between English and Dutch, which one you want. Or you can push yourself and just have French and French. So like the French words and some French definitions of French help on the other column. Yeah. Tony is saying, nir, rein, kidney. Yeah, Dutch, French, English. That's correct. And I would just say le Rhin because it's masculine. And yeah, Nancy's asking, can I recap the grammar? I can, yes, I will do the French recap afterwards. And if you have a more specific question about the grammar, please ask, because a lot of what I was saying was grammar. Maybe I can tell you exactly what's written here. So that's what you're asking. So it's saying similar sentence structure. That's similar, which is missing. And then you have the subject, verb, object order in English, in French, and also in Spanish. So all three of them. And then the placement of adjectives and pronoun is similar in Spanish and in French, and it's different from English. And the conjugation rules, most of them are similar in French and Spanish. And there are a few important differences, which is specifically past tenses and the use of subjunctive. So I hope that helps your question. Any tips on not mixing up pronunciation? Great question. I think I would need to listen to how you speak. You're in the French Accelerator, so if you would like to come next week to our group coaching call and just bring examples of what you mix, that would be easier perhaps if I can hear what you mean with mixing pronunciation, because I haven't really thought of that. To me, they feel very different, French and Spanish. I really don't really know. I mean, probably a lot of daily French bath and things you could use, for example, karaoke, like singing a long French song and singing a long Spanish song would probably help you with pronunciation. But I think, yeah. So yes, you're saying French and Spanish has different pronunciation of words. French is softer than Spanish. Maybe, for me, it's my native language, so it's kind of normal. So yeah. Eve was also saying he struggles with this, so I don't know. If you can give me more input on how you struggle with it, perhaps I can help further. And while you're thinking of your questions, I can explain the idiom of the week. Oh, I get the sion sound really confused between Spanish and French. So it's sion in French. One big difference between French and Spanish in pronunciation is that we have nasal sounds, so un, un. Those sounds, they exist in French, but they don't exist in Spanish. That's one of the key differences. So, for example, prononciation, that's un, prononciation. In Spanish, it would be pronunciación, because you cannot have the nasals. So sion, the sion sound, like the sound that ends in shun in English, it's sion in French, and it's sion in Spanish. So it's slightly different. I hope this helps. Pronouncing each letter is more common in Spanish than in French. Yes, silent letters are very rare in Spanish. I don't know if there are even officially any, while in French you have lots of silent letters. So yeah. You were saying that helps out. Great, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, so idiom of the week. And of course, if you have any other questions, just go ahead and type them in. I'm happy to answer them. Let's talk about the idiom of the week. Parler français comme une vache espagnole. Literally, to speak French like a Spanish cow. That means to speak very poor French. I do not know, and I cannot tell you for the life of me why they came up with this expression, but it's something we do say quite often. Like when I was a kid, my mother would always say things like, oh, cette personne parle français comme une vache espagnole. Ou il parle français comme une vache espagnole, for anyone who just cannot speak French properly or someone who makes a lot of mistakes. So I hope that you guys are not speaking French like Spanish cows. J'espère que vous parlez pas français comme des vaches espagnoles. But if you want to criticize the way that someone speaks French, that's an expression you can use. The H. The H there's no h sound in French. Like we don't have this sound. In Spanish, it exists. So for example, hermana, that's sister. You don't have this sound in French at all. So un cheval espagnol. I was trying to say this one. Oh, you were trying to say comme une vache espagnole, and you said comme un cheval espagnol. Well, for what it's worth, I don't think that Spanish horses speak better French than Spanish cows. But yeah, it's an expression we don't have. It's cute though. Parler français comme un cheval espagnol. Pourquoi pas? Why not? All right, so are you ready for the French summary? Just brace yourselves. I don't know why it's a lot hotter than I thought. It's so warm right now. Okay, my computer still says to me, speak slowly. I'll try to speak slowly. Je vais essayer de parler, and it would be nice to do a Spanish summary, but I'm not trusting myself to do that right now, so. Un resumado español. I don't even know if you say resumado in Spanish. I'm just not gonna try. My Spanish sucks right now. Okay. le résumé français. Donc aujourd'hui, on parle d'apprendre les deux, apprendre le français et aussi l'espagnol avec succès, parce que apprendre sans succès, c'est pas intéressant. Donc, comment on peut apprendre à la fois le français et l'espagnol, et aussi en général, comment on peut apprendre deux langues, pas seulement une langue, mais deux langues. Donc, quelque chose de très important à comprendre, c'est que le français et l'espagnol sont des langues latines. Ok, donc l'anglais, c'est une langue à moitié latine. L'anglais, c'est un mélange d'une langue latine comme le français et d'une langue germanique comme l'allemand. Mais le français et l'espagnol sont des langues dont presque tous les mots, ou peut-être 80-90% des mots sont d'origine latine. Et ça, c'est important parce que ça veut dire qu'on peut utiliser la connaissance du français pour apprendre l'espagnol et vice-versa. On peut utiliser la connaissance de l'espagnol pour apprendre le français. Donc, et aussi que les conseils que je vous donne aujourd'hui et sur cette feuille et sur ce live, ces conseils s'appliquent pour toutes les langues latines, donc l'espagnol, l'italien, le portugais, le roumain, etc., d'autres langues latines minoritaires. Et aussi, ça s'applique d'une certaine manière pour des langues non latines, comme l'allemand, comme le russe, le chinois, etc. Il y a certaines choses que je partage aujourd'hui qui s'appliquent à d'autres langues et d'autres qui s'appliquent plus essentiellement à l'espagnol. Les choses qui s'appliquent plus essentiellement à l'espagnol, c'est des choses comme la grammaire, la conjugaison et le vocabulaire. Donc, pour la grammaire, on a une structure des phrases qui est vraiment très similaire en français et en espagnol. Donc, dans le passé, on a appris que l'ordre des mots en français et en anglais suivait l'ordre sujet, verbe, objet, et que ça, c'était assez rare parce que c'est seulement à peu près un tiers des langues du monde qui ont cet ordre. Mais parmi ce tiers des langues du monde, il y a l'anglais, le français et l'espagnol, et pas l'allemand, par exemple. L'allemand n'appartient pas à cette liste ou pas systématiquement. Mais le français, l'anglais et l'espagnol ont tous cet ordre. Et il y a d'autres choses qui sont en commun entre le français et l'espagnol, mais qui sont différentes en anglais. C'est par exemple le placement des adjectifs. En français et en espagnol, les adjectifs sont généralement après les noms, alors qu'en anglais, les adjectifs sont presque toujours avant les noms. Donc ça, c'est pareil en français et en espagnol, c'est différent en anglais. Et une autre chose, c'est que en français et en espagnol, les pronoms objets sont placés avant le verbe, alors qu'en anglais, ils sont placés après. Et j'avais donné l'exemple de la phrase I love you en anglais, où you, c'est le pronom objet qui est donc après le verbe, alors qu'en français, on dit je t'aime et le pronom objet, c'est te. Et en espagnol, on dit te quiero, donc le pronom objet, c'est te, et ça aussi, c'est avant le verbe. Donc, c'est vraiment similaire entre le français et l'espagnol. Un autre élément qui est très similaire entre le français et l'espagnol, surtout pour des apprenants anglophones, c'est la conjugaison, parce que presque toutes les règles de conjugaison sont similaires en français et en espagnol. Par exemple, on a 6 formes de verbes en français pour chaque temps, et aussi en espagnol, on a 6 formes de verbes pour chaque temps. Une chose qui est différente, c'est les temps du passé. Comme on les utilise en espagnol, il y a des règles différentes du français, et aussi le subjonctif. Les Espagnols sont beaucoup plus sérieux et ils utilisent le subjonctif beaucoup plus souvent que les Français. Par exemple, en français, on utilise seulement 2 formes de subjonctif, et les 2 autres, on les a dans le Becherel. Je vous avais montré une page de Becherel. Donc, en français, sur le papier, il y a 4 subjonctifs, mais on utilise surtout un et parfois très rarement l'autre. Mais en espagnol, on les utilise tous. Donc ça, c'est une grande différence. Mais en général, les conjugaisons, c'est à peu près similaire entre l'espagnol et le français. Une autre chose qui est très similaire, c'est le vocabulaire, qui est 50% du vocabulaire de l'anglais vient du latin à travers le français. Donc, ces mots-là de l'anglais, on peut les trouver aussi en espagnol. Donc, par exemple, on peut apprendre à voir quel mot Ivo, j'ai lu ta question, je répondrai plus tard. On peut voir en anglais quels sont les mots qui sont d'origine latine. Ça se voit un petit peu. Par exemple, ils ont beaucoup plus de voyelles et ils sont souvent beaucoup plus longs et beaucoup plus originaux. Ce sont des mots d'un niveau plus soutenu. Donc, si vous apprenez à reconnaître ces mots en anglais, vous serez capable de savoir quels mots aussi existent en français et en espagnol. Ça, c'est très pratique. Et enfin, la dernière partie de ce sujet, c'était la stratégie. Donc, comment on peut devenir trilingue, comment on peut apprendre à parler 3 langues. Donc, la première chose qui est très importante, c'est de comprendre qu'une fois que vous avez appris une langue, vous pouvez appliquer la même stratégie pour apprendre la deuxième langue. Donc, par exemple, je vous ai montré que tout ce que vous utilisez dans le kit de démarrage du français courant, de French Starter Kit, toutes ces choses-là, vous pouvez aussi les utiliser pour l'espagnol. Ça marche pareil Pour les conseils sur le vocabulaire, vous devez les ajuster un petit peu, mais comme c'est l'espagnol, c'est très proche du français, ça marche aussi. Et donc, je vous recommande de télécharger ces ressources et de les utiliser soit pour le français, soit pour l'espagnol, soit pour les deux. Et enfin, une chose très importante, c'est d'essayer d'éviter de mélanger les langues. Donc, comment on peut éviter de les mélanger? Comment on peut éviter de faire une soupe de mélange de français et d'espagnol qui sont ni l'un ni l'autre et que personne ne comprend? La première chose qui est très importante, c'est quand on veut apprendre plusieurs langues, c'est mieux de commencer par une langue. Et je vous recommande de commencer par la langue qui est la plus importante pour vous, soit pour des raisons émotionnelles, parce que vous aimez cette langue, ou alors pour des raisons pratiques, parce que vous devez la pratiquer, parce que vous habitez dans un pays francophone ou un pays hispanophone, vous en avez besoin pour votre travail, ou que sais-je. Donc, la langue qui serait la plus importante pour vous, c'est celle que vous devez prendre en premier. Et ensuite, quand vous avez atteint un certain niveau, un niveau, je dirais, de conversation courante, peut-être pas courante, mais un niveau où vous pouvez converser, le niveau B1 à peu près, vous pouvez aller dans un pays et régler tous vos problèmes. Là, c'est le moment où vous pouvez commencer à apprendre la deuxième langue. Et ça sera beaucoup plus facile parce que votre cerveau sera déjà bien habitué à la première langue et vous aurez moins de chances de tout mélanger depuis le début. Si vous n'avez pas fait ça et que vous avez quand même mélangé, ou si vous avez fait ça, mais vous avez quand même mélangé, une bonne solution que j'ai trouvée, que j'ai utilisée quand j'ai pratiqué l'espagnol et le portugais en même temps, c'est d'utiliser des listes de vocabulaire trilingues. Parce qu'en fait, ce qu'on mélange, la plupart du temps, c'est le vocabulaire. C'est assez rarement la grammaire qu'on mélange. Et même si on la mélange, c'est souvent pas très grave. Mais le vocabulaire, c'est compliqué parce que si vous prenez trop de mots d'une autre langue, on va pas vous comprendre. Donc, une bonne solution, c'est d'utiliser des listes de vocabulaire trilingues avec 3 colonnes. Donc, pas seulement le français d'un côté et l'anglais de l'autre, mais le français, l'espagnol et l'anglais. Ou alors seulement 2 colonnes, mais le français et l'espagnol. Et ça c'était très utile pour moi et c'est vraiment un conseil que je vous donne si vous voulez pratiquer et bien séparer 2 langues qui se ressemblent, c'est d'utiliser des listes avec ces 2 langues-là. Parce que comme ça me permettait de savoir un peu plus quel mot faisait partie de quelle langue automatiquement parce que je savais dans quelle colonne il était. Et si je trouvais un mot et j'avais pas le mot dans la bonne langue, je trouvais automatiquement l'autre parce qu'il était à côté. Donc ça, c'était très pratique et je vous recommande vraiment de faire ça. Et enfin, l'expression de la semaine, c'est parler français comme une vache espagnole. Ça veut dire parler français très mal, ne pas bien savoir parler français. Donc voilà, c'était le résumé en français. That was the French summary. I hope it wasn't too fast. I pretty much explained all the same things, again in French, just a little bit more condensed. And I see we have a couple more questions. So, do you know any YouTube YouTube channels similar to me, but for Spanish? Top of my head like that, no. I don't know any Spanish channels where they will explain. I mean, the thing that I do is pretty special. Like I was asked recently if I knew someone who do the exact same thing as me, but for German, but I don't. It's really my coaching method which I developed, so it's not really widespread. But there are a lot of channels where you can learn Spanish for sure. I just don't have one at hand like that, but you can find them. And what is the second form of the subjunctive in French that is sometimes used? Okay, so that is the subjunctive passé. So, for example, let me get one. Okay, créer, good example. So, créer means to create. You have the présent, so il faut que je crée, like, you know, I have to create something, that would be il faut que je crée. That's the regular one that we use most of the time. And then you have the second one, which is the past, and that would be il faut que j'ai créé. And that would mean I have to have created this by a certain date. So, for example, I could say, oh, il faut que j'ai créé la feuille de travail avant de faire le cours dimanche. So that's a case where I could use the subjunctive passé. So it's if you have a sentence that commands the subjunctive and you need that thing to not be done in the future, but to have been done by a certain date. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit tricky to explain like that. It's pretty rare too. We don't use it very often. So yeah, please let me know if that makes sense to you. Thank you. Yes. Okay, great. All right. So yeah, we do have another 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, please ask away. By the way, Ivo, if you need help with the subjunctive now that you're in the French accelerator, there is a workshop about that. It's under verbs. We have 3, I believe, about verbs, which is like verb 101, the past, and the subjunctive. So you can go watch that. Nancy's saying you're awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. By the way, funnily enough, I found a Dutch coach channel in French. Oh, that would be nice to share that. Can you share it? Not in the Facebook group because you're not there, but you can just, yeah, paste it here. Andrea is saying merci and gracias. Yes, that's merci in Spanish. So yeah, de nada, as they say. Yeah. Any other question? If you're not in the French Accelerator yet, you can join. You have the link in the worksheet, and you have the link in the description as well. You can also apply for a scholarship. Right now, the scholarships are, we have completed the first round of scholarships, which we have started working with the scholarship students. And I mean, generally all the students who are in the French Accelerator, and we all have a coaching call together on Sundays, 2 hours before this one. So if you join the French Accelerator, you'll be able to join on that. And if you would like to apply for a scholarship, you can actually still send your application. The link in the worksheet is still valid. It's just that the next round of scholarships will be in January. So towards the end of December or beginning of January, I will contact everyone who has left their application on the website, and then I will conduct interviews again to have the next batch of scholarship students. But of course, you will have to wait to get a scholarship. However, if you want to join the French Accelerator and to be a sponsor, you can do it right now. And I will count, however, how many people have joined and paid their membership in between now and January. And that will be however many scholarships we have, because it's always 1-to-1. So for each person who joins the French Accelerator and pays for their year in the membership, I will also give one scholarship away. That's how it works. So you know where you're at. If you can be a sponsor, then you can join at any point. You'll have the link in the description. And if you would like to be a scholarship student, you can just send your application at any point, and I will contact you when you do the next round of recruitment for the scholarship. And I also give one-on-one classes. As of right now, I have several spots available. So if you would like to have, whether you're in the French Accelerator or not, it doesn't matter. When I don't have enough spots available, I reserve them for the French Accelerator students. But right now I have more spots than just needed for the French Accelerator students. So even if you're not in there, you can just use the link in the description below, and you will get to my website, and then you can book a call with me. You have to go to the French transformation. It's in the description. It's frenchfluency.net/transformation. And you can book a call with me, and then we can discuss the situations, what you need to learn. I will create the roadmap for you. If you work one-on-one with me, I will create your entire curriculum, so you won't have to do it yourself. In the French Accelerator, you have the workshops that you can just follow. But if we work one-on-one, I will make it for you. So it's a lot faster and more comfortable, of course, to work with me one-on-one. It's also more expensive, obviously. Okay, so a question. Is it possible to do the worksheet in editable document or some format when you can type rather than print and write? Technically, it should be possible, but I've always had a bunch of issues with it. What you can do, however, is you can probably take the PDF and you can use an online website. You type make PDF editable and you upload it, and they will probably change it for you. But then you have to save it specifically and make sure you don't fill it in your... Unless that's changed, maybe they have updated the navigator or whatever. But I wasn't using it because in the past it was a problem that if you fill it in your navigator and then you try to save it, it didn't work. So I was like, okay, it's better to just tell people to print it and use it on the paper. But you can probably use an editable PDF platforms like that exists for free, I'm pretty sure. So tell me if that works for you. All right, we do have a whole bunch of minutes left. We have 12 minutes left. If you have any questions, please ask away. I was not expecting this to be so fast. I thought I would ramble a lot more on the topic of learning several languages and learning French and Spanish successfully. Next week, I will make the live about making the French language gender neutral. Now, you can't really make French gender neutral, but you can speak in a way that you don't attribute a gender to to people. And that's really useful because sometimes you may not want to gender the people. So I will share the little tricks and strategies that you can use to avoid having to gender people in French. There's not much you can do, but if you're very skilled, you can avoid gendering people. So I will share that in the next one. And then I'll make one about learning French and German. That will be interesting, actually. There will probably be a lot of overlap. I mean, there will be a lot of overlap with what we did today, so I don't want to do it just next week, but in a few weeks, yeah, we'll just go for French and German. All right. Linda, was there a reason you wanted to learn Portuguese and Spanish at once, or just a personal challenge? So I learned Spanish. That's like, yeah, that's a story. Thank you for the question. Great question. I learned Spanish in school at first, and then I decided to learn Portuguese because in the old age of the internet, I met some Brazilian people online, and just I thought it would be fun to learn their language. And at that point, it was after I was out of high school, so I didn't really need to learn it. I just did it for fun. And then for learning Portuguese and Spanish at once, what there was, I think it was in 2016, there was the Italki language challenge, because at the time I was working a lot on Italki. And I challenged myself to bring my Spanish and my Portuguese back to fluency in 1 month. That was the whole thing, because I think it was like a 30-day challenge, or 2 months. I think it was 2 months. I think it was July and August. So there was like this challenge, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna make that my challenge, and then that's what I did. It was interesting. Okay, Ivo, I sometimes struggle with using de versus du, de les, des in situations like dépression de l'hiver, for example, or étudiant de français au cahier de l'élève. What is the rule here? I'm trying to make sense of the question. I mean, the exception in this list is clearly étudiant de français, because you're right, it should be du français. Why we don't have an article here, I don't know. In practice, almost always you will use the article. So d'expression de l'hiver, I think I would say dépression hivernale more, right? But you can say that dépression de l'hiver, or cahier de l'élève. That is the right thing. And in dot, use an article. That's actually also something I believe I was saying in our group class like 2 hours ago. There is almost always an article in French, and you can just learn the exceptions when there are no article. One exception is beaucoup. You always say beaucoup de, you never say beaucoup du. So beaucoup de gâteaux, beaucoup de tartes, beaucoup d'eau, beaucoup de bouteilles, etc. So beaucoup de is one exception. Yeah, I'm not sure about étudiant de français, what the rule is that makes this one an exception. It's just, maybe it's just how it is, I don't know. But yeah. Tony is saying, for grammar reference, I would suggest low less Spanish, or even low less French. Oh yeah, that's a good channel. You can use that for French and Spanish. Right. Any other question? Otherwise, I'm just gonna sign off, because I love rambling. But if you don't need me to speak about more things, or you don't have any inkling, I'm just really surprised that it's not so much time. Also, there's quite a bit of like people on this call, so it's not so much that we have few people. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming efficient. Who would have thought? All right. Anything else? I'm just gonna go. So I hope you're not going to speak French like Spanish cows this week. J'espère que vous n'allez pas parler français comme des vaches espagnoles. I mean, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. If your grammar isn't great, who cares? Yeah. Can I give 10 words which are the same in Spanish or French? Yeah. I mean, they're not the exact same, but for example, français is français, right? So that's French. Espagnol is Spanish, and it's espagnol in French. It's spelled differently though. So espagnol, this is how we spell it in French, and in Spanish it's espagnol with like just the N and the tilde. So espagnol, that's 2. Can I find 10? I'm only seeing stuff around me that's called differently in Spanish and in French. Okay, la botella, la bouteille. Okay, very, very similar. El teléfono, le téléphone. That's 4. El chocolate, that's also the same in Spanish, but that I can also call los bombones, so the sweets. That would be 6. Trying to find examples. Los libros, that's les livres in French, so that's similar, 7. Fun one, seigneur or seigneur, but they're not exactly the same, I suppose. Yeah, that's actually a good case of a false friend, because in French, seigneur in Spanish, that means monsieur in French. It means sir, basically. But seigneur in French, it means lord. So I would consider that a false friend. I was at 7. Los cristales, el cristal, los cristales. That would be 1, 7, no, 8. What do I have? La Torre Eiffel, it's in French, La Tour Eiffel, so close enough, that's 9. And I'm not sure if it's La Carta or El Carta. I think it's El Carta, but I'm not sure. Let's not count this one, I'll find another one. Okay. This is a game of Chinese checkers. Le jeu in French and el juego in Spanish. Not exactly the same, but same root. So yeah, that's 10. I hope that counts. I'm just realizing that there are so many words that are not actually, well, okay, el papel, that's le papier in French. So that's similar. You do have a lot that are similar, they're just not exactly the same. So but it's helpful to know that they look alike. So yeah, welcome. Thanks for the challenge of finding 10 words in Spanish that are similar as in French. To be honest, my Spanish is just terrible right now. So it's not so easy, but yeah, I appreciate that. Sí, a kind of a fault find. Oh yeah, a good one, because sí in Spanish is the same as oui, while in French you only use sí to answer to a negative question. So for example, tu n'es pas fatigué, you're not tired, and in English you say yes if you're actually tired. In French you say sí. But if I say tu es fatigué, so are you tired, you answer with oui in French. While in Spanish you use sí in both cases. So it's not exactly the same, but it's not exactly different. So yeah, good one. All right. Can we find something to do for the remaining 4 minutes, or do I just jump out? I guess I'm just gonna jump out. So yeah, thank you guys for being here with me. If you haven't subscribed for this channel, I guess all of you who are here have subscribed already, but if you haven't, please subscribe. Oh, something I need to tell you. I missed your question, did I? Which question? Damn. Do French students learn the passé simple in school? I did. When I was in school myself, I did learn it. I don't know if they still do. It's honestly a good question. Perhaps in middle school or high school, because when we read French, French literature, we do have a lot of passé simple still in the old text, so it would be difficult to not learn it at all. I don't know if they learn to use it. Maybe they just learn to recognize it and understand it, which is actually what I would actually recommend you do as well. Like, don't waste your time with passé simple. It's not useful. But yeah, I did learn it. I learned all the conjugation in school. It was a pain, but at least now I know the conjugations quite well. So that's cool. Something I need to tell you. I have 2 more videos, 2 more French lessons with Bradley Cooper that are coming for you this week. Actually, as soon as I sign off, I'm going to set my computer to render them, because I finished editing them this morning. And I didn't render them yet because they would have immobilized my computer for the whole day. But now it's the night, it's 8 p.m. So I'm going to be able to just let it do the work during the night. And I'll probably put one online tomorrow and one online the day after tomorrow, so Monday, Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I have a really cool podcast. So you know the Cultural Fluency podcast, which I started a few weeks ago. It's actually taking off really fast. I mean, I think we're having basically an episode every week from now on. So we have number 4 that's coming. If you haven't watched the first 3, the first one is with Jackie McGinn, with my hypnotherapist. The second one is with Marian Altman, who's an astrologer and crypto trader, really good conversation. And the third one, which was out this Wednesday, is with Sharmila Medicine, and she's a sexologist and a content creator, and yeah, a lot of things. Really great conversation as well. Next one is with Ashton Colby, who is a transgender entrepreneur whose mission is to shift the narratives around transgender people and just, get into a more empowering narrative. So we had a great conversation. I had a great conversation with him yesterday, and then I spent quite a bit of time editing it because the connection was horrible. So I made it cleaner for you, a bit cleaner, but it's a great conversation. Even if the sound is not super great, I really recommend listening to it, because it's a conversation that's very rare, that you won't hear often. So totally recommend that. So yeah, I have things coming to this channel in the next 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I'll see how long it takes to get something else. But on Tuesday, I'm going to Toastmasters, and I have to give a speech, which I have not prepared, but I love to make a YouTube video to practice my speeches. So probably I'll make one, and then it will be available on Thursday or something. I want to make a speech about how I'm not an entrepreneur, which is going to be fun because I used the title Transgender Entrepreneurs for the conversation with Ashton. So I guess I'm now going to make the exact opposite case. It's going to be fun. that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I have love-hate relationship with this word entrepreneur. I guess technically that applies to me, but in practice, it's, yeah, we'll see. Would you like to hear about that? I hope you will. And if you don't, well, you just don't listen to this video. But if you're curious about it, I'm probably going to make a video about that, which is coming this week. All right, so we survived the entire hour. Thank you guys for sticking with me until the end. It was amazing to be here with you. I hope you have learned some things about Spanish and French and how to learn them without mixing them. And I will see you next Sunday. Au revoir. Adios, as they say in Spanish.